The movie starts with a dog named Buck. He's a bit naughty and lives in a nice house with a judge. One day, the judge's servant takes Buck to the market where he has a great time. Since Buck is the judge's favorite, no one scolds him. A man notices Buck and says he's a strong, well-bred dog, perfect for working. It's the judge's birthday. In the morning, Buck wakes up the judge's kids by jumping on their bed. He's big and heavy, so the whole house shakes when he moves. Meanwhile, the judge's servant is cooking tasty food in the kitchen. When she sees Buck coming, they hide the food because she knows he'll make a mess. Buck gives her an innocent look, but she tells him to behave well if he wants food. Outside, Buck sees a rabbit and chases it, but his head gets stuck in a tree. Then, he notices a fancy table in the garden with lots of delicious food for the judge's birthday party. When the judge's friends arrive, Buck is called for a photo. But later, the judge sees Buck with a piece of meat in his mouth and realizes Buck ruined the food before the guests arrive. The judge gets mad and punishes Buck by making him stay outside all night. It's stormy, and Buck keeps looking at the door. Suddenly, he hears the gardener's voice. He goes to him, and the gardener throws a biscuit into the carriage. Buck goes inside the carriage because he was quite hungry. The gardener shuts the door, and Buck notices that the gardener was taking money from someone. Buck realizes he has been sold to the man who was talking about him after seeing him. He is taken to a place, put in a box, and then loaded onto a train. When Buck wakes up, he barks and asks for food. A man with a stick opens the box and beats Buck badly. This is the first time Buck has been beaten. Even after this, Buck doesn't give up. He finds a chance and runs away. When he gets outside, he sees he is on a ship surrounded by water. He realizes he can't escape. When the ship reaches its destination, Buck looks around in surprise. Snow starts falling, and Buck sees snow for the first time. He feels very happy and plays in the snow. Later, he frees himself from his rope and runs away. We then see an old man named John, who is leaving his house. While walking, he accidentally hits Buck, and they meet for the first time. Now, Buck finds himself among other dogs that are being sold. Buck wants to be friends with the other dogs, but none of them befriend him. One day a man arrives and really likes Buck. He buys Buck. This man is a postman. The postman needs a dog to pull his sled, which is like a cart for traveling on ice. Buck is chained with the other dogs, and a collar is put around his neck. When the dogs start moving, Buck struggles to walk on the ice. He trembles and falls down. The postman realizes that Buck cannot walk properly on the ice. That night, the postman and his assistant set up a tent and go to sleep. Buck drives the assistant away and sleeps with the postman. When the assistant wakes up, she sends Buck away from the tent. Suddenly, Buck sees a black wolf outside and gets scared. As he runs, he sees another dog sleeping in a hole in the snow. That dog gets up and lets Buck sleep in his place, then digs a new hole for himself. Now, Buck learns how to sleep on ice. The next morning, they continue their journey, but Buck still struggles to walk on ice. After delivering their letters, they stop for the night. All the dogs are given fish to eat. One dog takes another dog's fish. When Buck sees this, he gives his own food to that dog. All the dogs are surprised by Buck's kindness. The next morning, a dog is drinking water. When another dog tries to drink, the first dog stops him and pushes him away. Buck sees this and digs through the ice to bring out water for everyone. All the dogs become happy with Buck. Now, they start to like him. The dog who stopped others from drinking water becomes angry. Meanwhile, Buck has learned how to run well on ice. One day, the postman's assistant falls into the water while checking the ice. Buck sees this and jumps in to save her, risking his own life. At first, she doesn't pay much attention to Buck, but after this she starts to like him. That night, she calls Buck to her and feeds him. Another dog watches this and becomes jealous. After the postman and the assistant go to sleep, Buck sees a rabbit and starts chasing it. He plays happily with the rabbit, but suddenly, another dog arrives, kills the rabbit, and attacks Buck. Buck faints from the attack. Just then, the black wolf appears and throws the other dog away. This is the same black wolf Buck has seen before. In the morning, the postman calls for Buck, but Buck isn't there. The postman searches for him because he wants to tie him in front of the sled. When Buck returns, he runs fast with great energy. The postman is very happy to see Buck's strength. Suddenly, he notices ice falling from the mountains. The postman tells Buck to turn in another direction. In front of him, Buck sees the black wolf again. Understanding the danger, Buck leads everyone safely through a cave. The postman realizes that Buck is a smart and mature dog. Thanks to Buck's speed and intelligence, they reach their destination. They deliver the letters, and everyone is happy to receive them. John, the man who once hit Buck, is also there. At home, John writes a letter to his wife. In the letter, he mentions that it is their son's birthday, but their son is no longer in this world. That is why John left his house. Buck sees the black wolf again and realizes that whenever he sees it, something good happens. The next morning, the postman prepares to leave with the letters. John calls out from behind, but the postman is in a hurry. Buck runs back to take the letter letter from John. Many days pass. One day, the postman receives a letter from the government ordering him to return and sell all the dogs. He feels sad that he must leave them, but he has no choice. He departs, leaving all the dogs behind. A rich man arrives and buys all the dogs. He is searching for gold and chains the dogs to his sled, ordering them to move. The luggage was too heavy, and Buck and his companions struggled to pull it. Meanwhile, John was also preparing to leave, but when he saw this, he warned that it was too dangerous to continue. However, the rich man, blinded by greed for gold, refused to listen and took the dogs with him. As they traveled, Buck's condition worsened, and he eventually fainted from exhaustion. The rich man, frustrated, was about to kill him when John arrived. John tried to make him understand the risk of going further, but the rich man, obsessed with gold, ignored his warning. John then freed Buck from the sled and took him home. When Buck woke up, John told him that all his companions had died and that he was now free. Buck could go wherever he wanted, but he had no home to return to. He was lost and unsure of where to go. One day, John went to a bar to drink and Buck followed him. While they were there, the same rich man arrived, the one who had taken Buck's companions and led them to their deaths. When Buck saw him, he immediately attacked. The man stumbled back and pointed a gun at John. However, the people in the bar, seeing what was happening, stepped in and threw the rich man out. John was a heavy drinker, but Buck tried to stop him. One day, Buck hid John's bottle in the ice and sat on it. John tried to push him off, but Buck was too heavy. One day, John showed Buck a map, explaining that it led to a place filled with gold. His son had once marked a line on the map, saying that everyone should follow it. Now, John decided to do the same and set out on the journey to find gold. They boarded a ship and began their adventure. The next day, the water became rough and the ship sprang a leak. Forced to abandon it, they continued their journey on foot. Along the way, they discovered a house, which filled them with joy. Meanwhile, the rich man, still obsessed with gold, visited John's home with the intention of killing him. There, he found the map and immediately understood where John had gone. One day, while bathing in a stream, John discovered a small piece of gold. Overjoyed, he realized they had arrived at the right place. Buck, curious, jumped into the water and picked up a stone, but John laughed and told him it wasn't gold. Buck dived again and this time found a large piece of gold. Seeing a smaller piece in his mouth, he discarded it, amusing John. As they celebrated, a white wolf watched them from a distance. When Buck chased after her, she ran away. One day, Buck saw a pack of wolves hunting, but one of them fell into the water. Without hesitation, Buck rescued him. Grateful, the wolves accepted Buck as one of their own. From then on, Buck spent most of his time with the wolves, while John was left alone. However, Buck continued to bring food for John every day. One evening, Buck returned home late, only to find John had been drinking heavily again. Realizing John needed him, Buck stayed with him that night. The next morning, the white wolf called for him, and Buck followed her. John, seeing this, understood that Buck had found his true family and was happy for him. Feeling lonely, John decided to return home. He threw all the large gold pieces into the water, keeping only a small amount, saying it was enough for him. He told Buck, "You have found your family, and I will return home tomorrow." Buck grew sad upon hearing this and left to be with the white wolf. That night, John heard a noise outside. When he stepped out to check, he was confronted by the rich man, who shot him. The lantern in John's hand fell, setting the house on fire. The rich man, consumed by greed, tried to take the gold. Just then, Buck arrived and attacked him, pushing him into the flames, where he perished. John, gravely wounded, looked at Buck and, with his last breath, said, "My son, this is your home now. You will live here." With that, he passed away. The white wolf then took Buck with her. Sometime later, Buck and the white wolf became mates and had children. Buck became the leader of the wolf pack. Even though he was happy in the wild, he often visited the place where John had died, remembering the man who had cared for him. The movie ends with Buck, now truly free, embracing his new life in the jungle.